Well, hello, everybody. My name is Larry Gifford. I am the executive director and the founder and the president of PD Avengers. And it's great to have everybody here. I know this particular working group has taken a while to get off the ground, but this is our first meeting, and I'm real excited that you were able to join us here today. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Hey, look, there we have official working group, Paraquat, TCE, and other toxic chemicals connected to the increased onset of Parkinson's disease. We do have some introductions. Special guest is here today. We have a new study, quote unquote. We'll update the class action suit in Illinois, maybe get the latest in Washington, and we'll have some discussion at the end as well. The first thing I want to do is, and I'm going to try to, we're going to have name, location, Parkinson's connection, organization, and your interest in this group. I just want to go around the room since we are a working group. I'll end the slideshow there so we get to know each other and who we are and what we're doing. And I'll turn on my video and so you can see me in real time. Let's see here. There we go. So I'll start. Again, I'm Larry. I'm in Vancouver. I've had Parkinson's disease diagnosed in 2017. Originally from Ohio, grew most of my adult life on the West Coast and now up in Canada. And I am the national director of talk radio for Chorus Entertainment here in Canada. I want to end Parkinson's disease. And that's my connection to this. This seems like one of those things that we shouldn't have to meet about, but apparently we do. And so we'll strategize on that. Ken, do you want to go next? Oh, you're muted, Ken.
Okay, sorry. Ken Dando, live in Winnipeg, raised in an agricultural community in Manitoba, kind of the middle of Canada between Toronto and Vancouver kind of thing. I'm thinking potentially pesticides could have caused my Parkinson's or contributed to it. I worked one summer for an agricultural chemical company that sprayed crops. So I was pretty close to that, those kind of products when I was a kid. So okay. That's my background.
Dan?
My name is Dan Cannell. I live in Rochester, New York, which is about as close to Canada as you can get in the US, not being in Canada, about 40 miles from Toronto as the crow flies. I believe my Parkinson's was caused by exposure to trichloroethylene, which is a chemical called TCE. Right now, I'm obviously active in Parkinson's research. I still work a little bit at my day job, which is a corporate lawyer. And then I'm also an adjunct assistant professor of neurology at the University of Rochester Medical Center. And in that capacity, I work on Parkinson's research and in particular, looking at a study trying to link TCE to Parkinson's.
All right, Roger.
My name is Roger Tregellis. I live right now in Sarasota, Florida. I used to live most of my life in Connecticut. My interest in the group is because basically I worked for a company that I took a position in the plating department, and I was exposed to trichloroethylene for well over a year. The company that took away the chemicals from that place ended up becoming a Superfund site. So I'm pretty sure it's a combination of that. Plus I worked in at a farm for one summer in high school. They used the crop dusting. I don't know what they use for pesticide, but so I think between those two things plus a concussion when I was younger, I think the trichloroethylene is probably the biggest part I think would contribute to my Parkinson's. So I don't currently work. I live near here, says Sarasota. There's a organization called Parkinson Place here that I'm involved with heavily, and I run the men's peer group weekly, and we talk about all kinds of good things.
Great. Daniel.
Yes, my name is Daniel Lapointe. I'm the interim executive director at Parkinson, Quebec, and I work with Romain.
Excellent. Sharon.
Okay, now I see I'm okay to talk. So I'm Sharon Young, and I am retired. I was a teacher of music, and I was also a banker. So it's kind of nice to be finished with those things. I grew up in Missouri, and I was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2015. And it's just listed as idiopathic, and I don't have any more details on that really to share. But I do some advocacy work for the Quakers at the FCNL, the Quakers organization that lobbies in Washington, D.C. And then I have an interest in ending Parkinson's, like several others have said. That's what brought me here, reading the book and just saying, yeah, we can do this. We can get our people together and make a much louder voice.
Yeah. Rob Warner.
Hi everyone, I'm Rob Warner. I'm 46 years old, and I was diagnosed when I was 33 in 2008. I currently work as an aerospace engineer at Edwards Air Force Base, flight testing airplanes, and I am, I guess, I am also a advocate for Parkinson's with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and I'm also I run a support group here in California. Here in Tehachapi, California, we're pretty close to Bakersfield, where it's a lot of agricultural stuff going on, and so I'm not sure if I got it from the chemicals, but I definitely want to end Parkinson's.
Maria.
Hi, my name is Maria. I'm here with Parkinson Canada. I'm a knowledge management specialist. My interest in this conversation in particular is before joining Parkinson Canada, I was a Parkinson's researcher, and some of my work involved animal models with pesticides. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Larry. Hi, everybody. Similar to Maria, I come to you today from Parkinson Canada. I am the Director of Public Affairs and Regional Partnerships for the organization, which is a relatively new role for me. But I have been with Parkinson Canada for nearly 13 years in a variety of different roles. Very looking forward to this conversation. Obviously looking to start framing our advocacy program for Parkinson Canada, and I know this will help me learn more and be able to better inform some of the decisions and actions that we take moving forward. So thanks for having me.
Joanne.
I'm Joanne Stang, right now in southern Michigan, where we had a bad storm. I'm working on generator power and hotspots, so my connection seems to be pretty unstable. I'm in San Diego. My connection is husband who has Parkinson's. I feel like I want to do something, and this seems to be the reasonable thing for me to do. And I've talked with our San Diego people a lot about their support. So I'm here to learn.
Great, thank you. Brittany.
Hi, I'm Brittany Meyer. I work for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. I live in Washington, D.C., although I wanted to be in Quebec, in Montreal right now, but the border is closed. So I'm actually literally on vacation walking around Maine, Portland, Maine. And so I'm going to mostly stay on mute and I'm listening in, but I'm the lead on the Fox Foundation's work on Parkinson's and the environment. And so I'm happy to help. I'm here to help and happy to help on anything you guys need when I'm back in DC.
Great,
and so thanks for having me. Yep.
Enjoy your vacation, Brittany. And then we have one other gentleman on the line, Romain. Romain, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, so my name is Romain Rigal. I'm the Director of Programs and Services at Parkinson, Quebec, and I'm expected to give you a talk.
Yes. So Romain is our special guest today because Quebec Parkinson Quebec has accomplished something not, well, none of us have accomplished other than the, I guess, the country of France. So they're the second in the world to have the pesticides declared as an occupational hazard by the government. And so he's going to walk us through how they did that so we can copy it and duplicate it all over the world. Roman, the floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you very much. As I told you, I'm Director of Programs and Services. I'm a pharmacist by education, also have a degree in epidemiology, but as you'll find out during this presentation, so this didn't really help. Over the years, I think over the past 2 years, I developed political skills, and that helped. And this is what you need. And I'm going to show you what I've done and what the team at Parkinson Quebec has done to have Parkinson's listed as an occupational disease. So it's not only pesticide the issue, so Parkinson was the very first step, foot into the door. So first of all, whoops, hold on. What are the objectives of the presentation? So what are the reasons to get engaged? To review some of the scientific evidence behind the association between pesticide and pesticide exposure and development of the disease. And I'm going to show you how we managed to have PD listed as an occupational disease. So what are the reasons to take action? So I thought it would be nice to have three major perspectives. One is an individual perspective. As you may know, we don't quite know what are the very profound causes of Parkinson's disease. But still, since over 30 years, we know there's a modifiable agent causing agents, pesticides. So the lifetime risk of developing the disease in men above 45 is 1 in 20. When they're exposed to pesticide, they're almost doubling their risk factor to develop PD. So it's not 1 in 20, it's becoming 1 in 10. So that brings a lot. So when you have a chance to modify an agent, a possible cause of the disease, so that's one thing that's really important. But two, if you're coming from a PD association, this is really important because you're now holding on something, on a cause where your PD advocating agenda is meeting a societal issue. What I mean by that is in Quebec, province of 8 million individuals, we have 25,000 people living with Parkinson. So any topic, Parkinson related topic is not that important. However, if you're able to draw attention on pesticide and potentially the risk for the overall population to develop PD, you're no longer talking to your traditional audience of 25,000 individuals. You're talking the overall province or the overall country. So for Parkinson's disease, this was a turning point in terms of awareness. And I'm going to show you how I managed to increase that awareness around the cause of Parkinson overall, not only on Parkinson plus pesticide. Finally, I think there's also a societal perspective. And to illustrate that, I want to take the asbestos case. Back in the 70s, the OSHA regulated exposure to asbestos. And because they found out, well, there's clearly a link between occupational exposure and the development of several cancers. In early 80s, Quebec Compensation Agency recognized mesothelioma as an occupational disease. In the 90s, Quebec banned the use of asbestos in public buildings, and in 2018, Canada banned asbestos with exemptions. So this means that the recognition of the occupational status, as I said, was a foot into the door. And 50 years down the road, you can imagine a world free of pesticide. So this is what I have in mind when I think about the accomplishment that, or second accomplishment that Parkinson did in France and such as we did in Quebec. And hopefully that you'll be able to follow up on. So I'm going to review with you, some scientific evidence. So the first hypothesis of the association between pesticides exposure and, or at least occupational pesticides exposure and the development of PD was published in Quebec by a key researcher who worked on the introduction of levodopa in North America. So a key researcher in the PD world. And he found out that the more pesticides are being used in whatever area of Quebec, the higher the prevalence of PD was. So that was back in 1987. So this was the very first hypothesis. In 2012, there were a huge number of epidemiological studies plus number of studies and toxicological studies supporting the association between occupational exposure and development of the disease. A second meta-analysis showed that the risk was almost doubled, so times 1.6. So this means that we don't know in the general population who will develop PD. Some of us have genetic predispositions, but overall, if we look at that, the risk is almost doubled. So that second meta-analysis led to the recognition of the occupational disease status in France. It was very much handled by a patient association, not Parkinson France, but by an association of farmers who had developed cancers and Parkinson. And I think it took them about 6 years to get there. In 2019, this was the 9th meta-analysis, and this was a selection of only the 24 best studies in the world. So the study that meet the best scientific epidemiologic standards for use in meta-analysis. Again, the risk factor is overall increased by 1.7. Okay, now we're done with the number. Now we're going to jump into the political arena, which is much more interesting. So I'm going to walk you through the Quebec case study and what we've done to secure the listing of PD as occupational disease. So in 2019, we were pretty naive, and particularly I. We simply thought that as citizens, we had the power to just report the truth and that politicians would take action on it. So I'm going to walk you through that naive path. So it all started with, in early June 2019, with a number of press releases illustrating case reports from farmers randomly sparse in the province of Quebec who had developed Parkinson's. at that time, Parkinson Quebec didn't have any advocacy agenda on pesticides. We simply thought, okay, this is one of the possible modifiable causing factor. It's maybe time for us to jump on this file. So the very first thing, and if you work in a PD association, this is the very first thing you need to do, is to convince your board that it is a worth investment. And it is very much the case, because in the end, you're not targeting a huge population, but you're drawing a lot of interest to your organization. So meaning, and if interest, possible achievements, and achievements are potentially that can be translated into more funding, into more programs, more services. So it's really an awareness case study. It's almost a communication case study that I'm going to present to you. So back in early June 2019, as I said, many press releases around farmers in Quebec. And this led to, by the end of June, there were many questions in society that led the UPA, is the Union of Farmers of Quebec, the David Suzuki Foundation. I think you know what they do. So this is an environmental interest group, and Equiterre. It's pretty much the same. Those three groups, very influential groups, they joined together and they requested a parliamentary commission to the government. This was back end of June. And during summer of 2019, I thought, okay, Parkinson Quebec is a too small organization to draw traction around that topic. So I joined with David Suzuki Foundation, and I wrote a report on the many links between pesticides exposure and the development of the disease. So this was submitted to the Parliamentary Commission. I was heard by the Commission by the end of September. And from that Commission, over 700 recommendations were done. So early September was a peak in our awareness. I got many calls from the press because they wanted to know. It was very new to them that it was not only anecdotal. Now we had proof that, or we have evidence that Parkinson, or at least we had identified a potential cause for Parkinson's disease. Where I say that we were very naive is that by the end of 2020, January 2020, the government of Quebec, which is led by the CAQ party, withheld only 12 recommendations, and none of them were related to any health issue. So pesticides were not an issue at the time, because the commission in itself was a commission on evaluating the impact of pesticides on health issues, on environmental issues, but also on agriculture performance. And at the time, the Union of Farmers were very much against our report and against any recommendation that we had done, simply because they didn't know how to manage it. For them, pesticides are a key driver of performance, and they no other alternative. This is the way it is. So, as I said, 2019, we were very naive. We only thought we're going to throw a report, and down the line, we're going to obtain what we want. That didn't work. So, hopefully, we had another year, 2020. So I said, okay, you join with David Suzuki Foundation. However, the problem with them is that it's pretty much like, or they're not as fierce as Greenpeace, but they're still tagged as an environmental group. And when you're tagged as an environmental group, you're simply an outsider. So I thought maybe it's wiser to join with other patient associations that may have to deal with pesticides and are worried about the augmentation of the prevalence of their disease linked to pesticides exposure. So I created a patient association coalition called Victims of Pesticides of Quebec, made of 6 patient associations: Parkinson's Quebec, obviously, the Breast Cancer Action Quebec, Leukemia Society of Canada, Lymphoma Canada, Autism Montreal, and Safe Food Matters, which is a group based out of, I think they're based out of Winnipeg, or yeah, I think they are. So this was my first political lobbying group. In the end, I didn't quite know how to operate that group, but still it was another way to draw media attention around the cause of pesticide. And again, I was a spokesperson of the group, so Parkinson Quebec was able to draw traction in terms of awareness. So in the mapping, you have the yes, people in favor of recognizing PD as an occupational disease. And in the yes, you have a disabled worker association. You also have the opposition parties. So we have 3 in Quebec. Unfortunately, they're the opposition. So they're always they're always on the outlook for a potential subject where they can backfire on the government. So they're nice players if you want to play with them. But in the end, this is what I found out by the end of the year 2020. They're still in the opposition. They don't have a say on what's going on. So you'd better play with the one in power. And this is what I learned during this journey. So, but still, unfortunately, the one in powers were belonging to the no's. And so, the farmers, they were pretty much unsettled. So they said yes, but they were not really taking very strong position. What really helped and didn't help in Quebec is that we have 2 public health agencies. One is a general public health agency. They were in favor. They were reporting on the very good quality of studies, of epidemiological studies and toxicological studies. And they made a pretty good job. Unfortunately, those guys were unheard from the government. The one that was heard was another public health agency specialized in work and safety at work. And those guys, they produced a report that was completely faulty. And that report was provided to the Minister of Labor and to the compensation agency, because that public health agency, IRSST, they're working in pair with the compensation agency, and they are the ones providing advice on which diseases should be labeled as occupational disease. So this was a faulty report. When I was heard during the commission, I knew the minister was to use that report to simply deny the evidence. And this is what he did. And I backfired and I said, this report is completely, to say the best, whimsical. And well, they went beyond any proof, any scientific integrity. So you can imagine that the day after, I received a call from the IRSST top management, and we entered a game of who's true. And I found out, okay, and this was really stressful because they accused me of doing science bashing. And in a time where public health agencies are in the COVID time, you know how strong and how impactful the public health agencies are. And they said, by doing that, what you do, or by bashing our report, you contribute to the public bashing of public health agencies. So they were in a communication strategy where they they completely denied the scientific evidence, they denied the scientific fraud of the report, and they also helped the minister and this competition agency to strengthen their position on the denial of the occupational status. Okay, the neurologists, the Association of Neurologists was unfortunately of no help. When I met with them, I haven't met with the head of the association, but when I met with neurologists, unfortunately, they said our job is not to understand the cause of the disease, is mostly to diagnose the disease and to treat the disease. So we don't want to take position. I was helped by a bunch of researchers in Quebec, mostly basic researchers, but once you go beyond the line of basic scientists, clinical researchers that were of no help. So that's maybe something that you won't consider. Try to get support from physicians, because physicians in the end, they're very close to the government, or at least in Quebec. They are. Okay, so this was 2020. This is the ecosystem. Okay, January 2021 was heard in a second parliamentary commission, but this one was not about the environment, or nor the health, nor the agriculture. It was clearly about work and safety. So I was, again, the only patient association invited. So a lot of lobbying to be invited to that kind of commission. And I presented the data, the evidence, that's the epidemiological evidence, toxicological evidence, the case that in 2012, PD was recognized as an occupational disease. And when I met with the Minister of Labor, he said, well, he waved up and strong that faulty report from that health and safety public agency. So this is where I was early 2021. But it was clearly the wrong battle. The one battle that you don't want to go into is a scientific battle where people are gonna simply throw scientific evidence, but it's one after another. And when I met with the minister, he kept telling me, I'm not a scientist, so any piece of scientific evidence you show me, I don't understand. I'll create a scientific group that will evaluate the evidence, meaning he was trying to postpone the case, or at least not to say to ignore it. So this was clearly one of the other wrong battle I conducted. But still, it was worthwhile to get introductions. So I had a chance to meet with the minister a couple of times, and in April 2021, I realized, okay, you have very strong scientific evidence. You have support from some scientists. But those guys, they keep telling you, and you also have support from the opposition, but they're not in power, so they're not helpful. What can you do? And when I met with the minister, this was the last time I met with him, again, he repeated me, well, I'm not a scientist. It's very interesting, but I don't understand what you mean. And I said, well, and this will be examined and assessed by another group of scientists. And I showed him that slide. I said, look, this was published back in 1987. This shows you the prevalence of Parkinson. So this is the left-hand side of the slide. I'm not a politician, but if I look at the many districts where your party is in power, where your deputies come from, I can relate that. And you know what would be nice? What would be nice is that instead of me going after the press and trying to convince the press that it's a worthwhile cause and we should be talking about it, you know what I'd like to do? Is to go in rural areas with you and the Minister of the Environment, and we're going to shake hands in front of your citizens, the ones that are voting for you. And you know what? They are the ones that are the most exposed to pesticides. So it was kind of going beyond pesticides exposure and development of PD. It was, well, there's a correlation, it's an association. There's not causal relationship between CAC voting and development of PD, but clearly the map illustrates that you may have a card to play. But again, I'm just saying, I'm not a politician. And he laughed at me. He said, you played your first political card. Okay, so this was the very first bluff in April 2021. In, March 2021, no, it was slightly after that, I said, I'm going to play all in. I took that faulty report from EuroSST and I sent it to international experts. And those guys, their work had been wrongly reported in the report. So I got emails from those two experts. And instead of trying to play the battle with IRSST and say, look what the primary authors of the work think of your report, I said, they're not worth fighting against. The ones that are in power is the Minister of Labor. So I sent him those two emails to the Minister of Labor. And I said, you know, again, I'm not a politician, but it'd be just, you'd look bad if your name be tied to that faulty report, and now that everyone could be aware that not only it's scientific fraud, a public health agency from Quebec is not only frauding the data, but a minister is also instrumentalizing those faulty data, and he was aware of it. Obviously, I didn't go into all those details, but I think he made the math by himself. So I sent him those emails. I said, look, this is the evidence I have. You waiving this report, I think it's not true. Could you please approve, or at least not uphold your approval on the release of those emails to all the members of the Parliamentary Commission and also to the opposition parties. So I didn't get any email back. So a week after, I sent those emails with my case study, my business case study in a page. And you know what? This was the very first question in the Parliamentary Assembly. Again, I was getting traction. The minister didn't really took so, and the prime minister was asked by the lead of the opposition, why are you not taking action on it? We have evidence. We know what's out there. You've been telling us that you'd plan to do that. Your Minister of Environment had also said he'd do something. So that's the second minister of this government that's not taking action. So please explain us. And this is basically what I told them when I met with them during the Parliamentary Commission. It's not my role to tell you why you should take action. The scientific evidence is so strong that it's your role to tell me why you're not taking action on it. So as I said, I haven't received a formal yes, but because it was unanswered, I sent all the documentation to the opposition. The no was clearly not an option for the minister. This would have gone into the press, and it was preferable for him that I go to the opposition and that they deal with the case internally between politicians, rather than having that scientific scandal or scientific/political scandal out there in the press. So this was it, and by the end of mid-April, I got a call from the minister himself telling me, well, you know what, you've made the case, and now I'm going to announce that Parkinson's disease is going to be recognized as an occupational disease for the ones that have been exposed to pesticides for over 10 years, I think. Yes, it's 10 years of exposure. So the conclusions of the story are: one, advocating against pesticides can have a huge potential impact, and that impact can be measured at the individual level, at the PD association level, but also you can have a very strong impact on the society overall. You need to create the right conditions, and those are social and media environments for the change. Those are the conditions that are going to trigger parliamentary commissions, or they're going to have your deputies interested in the cause. When you talk with politicians, talk politics. Try to make them look good. This is the key learning from my journey. What my initial strategy was to use all the documentation I had to play hard against politicians in power. But then I found out, no, those guys, they want to look good. And potentially, if you help them look good, they're going to help you make your case. One piece of advice: keep the science away from the debate, because the science, you're going to always have someone talking wrong science. And in the end, it's not a science issue. It's not a science debate. It's clearly a political debate. What kind of society do we want to live into? Do we want our kids to be exposed to pesticides knowing that the risk for them might be 6 times higher to develop PD and potentially plenty of other chronic diseases? So it's clearly a political issue, not a science debate. Pesticides finally have plenty of synergistic effects. So don't try to single out the nasty ones. No one eats pesticide for breakfast. Pesticides are toxic elements. The toxic chemicals, and simply take the case of maneb or mancozeb, they have a very strong synergistic effect with paraquat. So if you're thinking of creating a group on paraquat and TCE, you may want to look at, yes, paraquat, it's nice, but how much of paraquat is used in the world? In Canada, I would say not that much. Most of agriculture is now into, or at least 40% of the crops are spread with glyphosate and Roundup, and secondly, as I said, paraquat is very nasty pesticide. But if you think of maneb, the two of them, and well, they're even worse. And there's not a single farmer that's using paraquat on its own. Every piece of chemical agent comes as a combo, and what you may not know is active agents. A number of studies, toxicological studies, have shown that the compounds that come along with the active agents of Roundup, for instance, potentiate the product so much it may have a toxicity increased by 1,000.
Wow.
So active agents, targeting one active agent, it's might be an option. You may think we need to start somewhere, but you need to keep that in mind.
They'll just ban that and get something else back on the market.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. Okay. Can we open it up for questions?
Absolutely. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And if you want to download our full report on pesticide association, and to me, it's not an association. Clearly, there's a causal relationship between pesticides exposure and development of the disease. It's simply not everyone will react the same.
Anybody have any questions or comments? All right. Ken, are you trying to get on, or there you go. Here you go. I'm going to ask you to unmute. I can't. Here you go.
That's been a fantastic presentation. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate that. One thing that was kind of interesting was how did they come up with the 10 years of exposure being the criteria?
It is one of the criteria listed in France. So when they made their mind, when they made up the mind, they asked me. We're aware that a position was taken in France. So do you know if they have some criteria? So what you need to know is that we are in an environment in Quebec where the minister were proposing a major modification to the law on occupational diseases, but he was mostly interested in adding not diseases to the list, but adding criteria to limit access to potential occupational disease. So he said, that's fair. I'm going to add Parkinson's disease, but I need some criteria. So tenure, what you need to be aware is they're very interesting meta-analysis showing that starting from year 1, you're already increasing your risk of PD. And that risk is almost, so 1 year is 1%, 10 years is 10% higher, and then it grows exponentially, sorry.
Great.
So it's kind of arbitrary, to make a short answer.
Well, okay, it's a start.
Anybody else? All right. Well, we are.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
is that
Maria.
okay? Sorry, I just had a quick question. And I don't know how much you're able to speak to this, but how do you have any sense of how your approach compares to the France's approach and it being on a national level? Because you were working very, very closely within the province, and just if you have any insights on differences or commonalities.
So what was common is that coalition of patient association. This is what we try to replicate with victims of pesticides. What was different? The PD, Parkinson Quebec was involved into the lobbying of the case, whereas Parkinson France was not. In France, what was also different was they released a major report back in 2012 where they showed, well, it's maybe a 1,000 pages long report on the impact of pesticides. It's a very extensive report, very comprehensive, and it's produced by the leading health agency of France. And it was produced at the request of the French government at the time. So they had to react to that report. And that's pretty much it, yeah. But
Thank you so much.
So, and the various governments in France were not really helpful in the case at the time, but in the end, they had to acknowledge there was a problem.
So Maria, you're going to have to get to Justin Trudeau's ego. Get the whole country behind it, right? All right.
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
You're
for
very
sure.
welcome.
I had some other things I wanted to cover. There was an article that came out about paraquat not causing increased death, which is odd because we're more concerned about the onset, and it confused a lot of people. Helen Matthews and Helen from the Cure Parkinson's Trust and the PD Avengers wrote a letter to the editors. They weren't very happy with our letter, but I'll share it with this group afterwards, so you guys can see what the response we got and whatnot. And then we'll next meeting we'll get Brittany to give us an update on the latest in Washington D.C. And then if you're interested in being one of the co-leaders of this group, just give me a call or send me a note, and we'll consider that. I don't want to lead the group, but I wanted to bring it all together, and I thought Roman would be a great way to kick it off because he is our definition of hope at this point. He's the gold star. So we're using him as motivation for us to get this done, knowing now that it's possible. Does anybody have any questions or comments before we say goodbye? Because I do want to be mindful of the time. Well, thanks everybody for being here. We do have about 30 some people that have signed up to be part of this group. So we had a fraction of them here today, as is always the case. Not everybody can make every meeting, but that's okay. I'll send out some recap notes and some more information, and away we go. We'll try to meet again once a month. Sound good? Great. Thanks so much, everyone.
Sounds good.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Larry.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.